Welcome back to my channel. This is me reacting and reflecting to a book that I wrote when I was 19 years old. This section is called The Human Condition. I believe it's the longest section and probably the longest of these visual chapters that I made.
The human condition. To be human is to be a mess of contradictions. You want freedom but fear responsibility. You want love but run from vulnerability. You want the truth but lie to yourself daily. We're not logical. We're not consistent. We're not always good.
I think this "but we're trying" part was because I was going through a lot of stuff at the time and trying to figure out stuff in life, what it meant to be a good person. Now, I would say looking back, I definitely know for sure that it is not a clear definition. You may do something where one group of people see that that is a good thing, while another group say, oh no, that's horrible. I can't believe you did that. That's so despicable, and vice versa. So understanding what that means to you and to the group of people that you want to be a part of or you want them to be a part of your life. I think that's key.
Fine, that's the condition. Trust no one. Not in the paranoid tinfoil hat way, but in the be careful who you open your soul to way. Trust is a currency. You give it based on history, not hope. Don't trust because someone said trust me. Trust because they've shown you repeatedly that they're safe.
By the way, the trust me statement is from a book that I used to own. It is, I wouldn't say it's illegal, but it can get you in trouble if you have it in your house or if you get caught up with something. The title of the book is literally Trust Me. It's a green paperback book. It's by an anonymous writer. It basically goes into the details of how scams work, what the mindset is, and how to follow through with them. So for me, it was quite interesting because it made me notice a lot of things, not just back then, but as I've grown older, where like you can't even trust posts you see on social media because you don't know if it's an advertisement. Sometimes it's very obvious, but there are other times where an influencer is they're just holding a drink. You're not thinking anything of it. They're just drinking it, and then it turns out to be it's actually sponsored, right? That is a trust issue, and it can create some paranoia because then you wonder: is this person giving me advice, or is this person talking to me out of their own self-interest? And a lot of times it is. So that's where I think the second part comes up.
But also remember, if you trust no one, you become untrustworthy too. Balance.
And that I think is key, right? You have to learn to be able to trust at some point, even if you're taking a risk. And that ties into like risk assessment, which is something I'm pretty good at actually.
Is lying white. Lies. Big lies. Lies by omission. Half-truths. Technically true lies. Silence. They're all lies. We learned to lie before we could spell. Did you eat the cookie? No.
I think I might have been traumatized by people lying to me. I genuinely feel the same way now. I do know that it's a lot more nuanced than that because as a parent, you end up having to lie about certain things, not because you don't want to be honest or truthful with your child, but because you know that they may not be at the stage in life where they can handle the truth or where it even matters. When your kid's really, really young, you don't have to say that Santa Claus is real or not real. You just go and you do the thing and they have a great time. And eventually they get older and either they realize it themselves or you tell them the truth. And I think in that situation, it's better to be the one who tells the truth.
Oh, crumbs everywhere. We were taught lying is bad, and then punished harder for the truth. So we adapted. Lying often feels safer than honesty, but it kills connection. It makes everything suspicious.
I still believe in this. This is why, if I feel like I'm in a situation where I'm being forced to choose between telling the truth or lying, I will request to just give me a moment, let me reflect, or let me get back to you. I don't believe that is a lie by omission, because a lie by omission is telling a partial and not completing the story, and with the intention of leaving that information out so that way it's perceived a certain way. So I've learned back then, even when I used to get back in trouble as a young teenager, that it really is important to know when you're caught, you're caught. Just tell the truth, because it's just, other than it's the right thing to do, it's also better for your situation. If you become known as somebody who's honest and who's always truthful and is against lying, it's not only better for your reputation, but it's also better for your own sense of self-worth. And I say that more so now than ever. So actually, I think I doubled down on this.
And eventually you don't even trust yourself. Tell the truth or say nothing. But don't pretend a lie is kindness.
Just like, well, it turns out to be I was right. Tell the truth or say nothing. Free time man's poison. This is back before everybody had phones, before everybody was distracted, and brain rot became what it is, or is becoming more and so common nowadays, not just with children and teens and young adults and even older people. It's the issue of brain rot is not the just the doom scrolling and whatnot. It is also the fact that you have free time that you are not using in a positive manner. I know for a fact that that is what I meant when I wrote that. At the time, I had some free time, and I realized that that free time was not being used in a positive way whatsoever, and instead, it was getting me into trouble when I was younger, and as I got a little bit older around the time that I actually wrote this book, it was making me dig deeper into a sense of depression that was actually non existent.
Every bad decision comes from too much unstructured time. When we're bored, we chase danger, distraction, or dopamine. It's not about being busy, it's about being directed. Free time doesn't have to be poison. It just needs a purpose. Learn, build, connect, heal, cook, create. Do something that doesn't suck your soul out through your screen. Because idle hands don't just do the devil's work, they start to crave it.
For anybody who's curious about this imagery, there's a reason I chose this, and it's showing that both the people in the background and the person on the computer have free time, but it's what you're doing with that time. Are you using for something positive? Are you using for something negative? Are you improving yourself? What exactly are you doing with it? Because we all end up with some point in life where we have free time. Now, I will admit, as an only child, technically, that I had more free time than other people, which meant that I also not only got into more trouble than other people, but I also got to reflect on my actions. I got to reflect a lot more on what I wanted to do because there were fewer distractions around me. So, my advice, because I have also lived in a house with, let me see, one, two, three, four, five, six other teenagers. I think we were all around, we were all teens at the time. When my father got married to my stepmother, she has three kids of her own, and then there were two adoptive, and then one neighbor who was always there. And that's not including the other people who would just randomly show up at our house all the time. So I do know what it's like having a house where it's so full or there's just so much going on, but there is still free time at the end of the day. There is still free time even when you are amongst each other. So trying to use that time wisely, I still stand by it unconditionally. Even as I've grown up as an adult and I've gotten into education, it's one of the things that I talk to parents about a lot. They're like, what do I do about my kid? Fill up their time. But they're fill up their time. They don't like the things that we're filling their time with. Well, then that's a you problem, not a them problem. You need to find out what are their interests. What is it that they want to achieve? What is it they are willing to sacrifice from themselves and go out there and do more? And I don't ever back down on that, because at the end of the day, especially for younger people, it's on the adults in the room.
Adaptation. Humans are incredible at adapting. We'll call a toxic job stable. We'll call a painful relationship familiar. We'll call abuse just how it is. That's not resilience, that's a slow death.
In case anybody was wondering, how did I have so much knowledge about work and relationships at 19? It's because, well, the first time I had a job, I think was 11. And I'm not talking about volunteering or working with my family or doing chores. I mean, a proper job, which I was a data analyst for a stock brokerage firm that sold penny stocks from Canada. And they were mostly shell companies. And anyways, I'll get into that. Just be patient. I will be at some point releasing a book slash videos about my life, but the insanity that I lived through will explain a lot of why I had these perspectives, not only just at a younger age, but why I was so adamant that I knew what the heck I was talking about, which is kind of true for a lot of young people. But mine came from a place of not only my personal experience, but the experience and knowledge of people around me.
Don't confuse survival with peace. Just because you got used to it doesn't mean it's okay. Adapt when necessary, but change when you can. Favors most favors.
Okay, so to end that one, don't get sorry. Just because you got used to it doesn't mean it's okay. I think this was more of a message to myself at the time because I was dealing with a lot of family related issues and they wanted me to be a certain way and to become a certain way and do certain things. And a lot of people go through this. A lot of young people around that age go through that because your family wants you to study a specific subject or they want you to get a specific degree or they want you to go to a specific university, and in the end I end up having to just branch out and do everything on my own. Now I know not everybody has that capability, but if you plan well and you do your research and you are genuine about it, a path seems to always find its way. So don't just sit there and take the abuse and take the negative situation and ignore that you are also a part of the solution.
It's okay. Adapt when necessary, but change when you can. Favors, most favors aren't free. They're quiet IOUs waiting to be collected. If you help someone and expect something back, that's not a favor. That's a contract.
I think I'm a lot gentler about this. When I was younger, I was very clear. If I'm doing this for you, then you need to do it for me. And that is transactional. And that's what I think I've meant by a contract. It's a social contract. If I help you move your from one apartment to another, and then let's say 6 months or a year later, I need to move, it is expected that you will help me in return. Now that's an easy one. That's a one for one type of situation. But another example is let's say you are moving and you want to consider it more of a favor or more of a you want to consider it less transactional, well, then I hope you have a couple pizzas, some drinks, some good music on, a good atmosphere and a positive attitude, because then, well, that makes up for it. And I don't remember if I get into transactions, but it is something I have been discussing with my best friend a lot lately. And I want to be very clear. I knew about how transactional relationships were back then, but as an adult and many years later, I've realized that every relationship is transactional, be it between a child and a parent or a parent and a child. Is that an immediate transaction? Is there an immediate return on investment or is it a long term one? Your parents can say, well, we did it because we love you. That's right. But your parents also expect you to follow their rules, to grow up, and to do something with your life so that way when the time comes, if the time comes, that you can return the favor. It doesn't have to be equal. And that is, I believe, ties into this. That's doing a favor. That even though you're doing a long term ROI, it doesn't matter because the favor is I'm doing this because I love you, because I care about you. And I genuinely believe that when I use the word favor, that's what my intention was.
Do it because you want to, not because you're keeping score. And if someone helps you, say thank you. Not what do you want, because sometimes good people still exist.
This I believe comes from all of my experience traveling. There have been a lot of instances in my life where I've been very fortunate where either I needed some type of assistance or I saw somebody who needed assistance. And I knew that I will never see them again or they will never see me again. So, again, looking forward though, I realize that it is still transactional. How is it transactional? Well, I help society so society is a better place. So then when the time comes, society helps me in return. And that's still transactional. I don't understand why so many people are so negative towards it being transactional. I still agree with the statement. You should not keep tally. You shouldn't be saying, oh, well, I gave this or I did this. Give what you are capable of giving, right? Do what you are capable of doing. This doesn't mean go above and beyond if you are incapable of actually sacrificing that much. It's still transactional, all of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, if it is clear, I think that's one of the main differences between me then and now is even though I spoke about truth, when it came to this, I felt like at that time that maybe it's one of those things where I'm hoping people are just doing it out of good nature. And there is some of that. Sometimes we do things subconsciously and we don't know why, or we don't reflect on it. But then when we do, we realize, oh, actually, the reason I did this was back in the day when I was in a similar situation. Somebody did that. It's like the giving just sometimes a smile is considered generosity, especially for somebody who is in a bad situation where you don't know the last time somebody even looked in their direction, even acknowledged their existence, and let alone gave them a smile that let them feel at least they were there. So, yes, good people still exist. I genuinely believe that you should still be a good person when you can, especially if it costs you nothing. I'm not talking just finances. Costs you nothing to make sure that the world is a better place.
Just not as often as you'd hope. What are people? People will let you down. That's a guarantee.
I was definitely going through a lot of depressive stuff, if you can't tell. People will let you down. That is a guarantee. I believe comes from almost everybody knows this experience. Your parents promise to do something or take you somewhere, and then they don't. And I genuinely believe we've all experienced that to some extent, but the people who have experienced it more often than not will relate to this.
T. But they'll also lift you up in ways you never expected. We're not good or bad. We're both. Daily. Stop labeling everyone. Start observing.
I, again, believe I spoke about this in the religion reaction video where there are good people who do good things, but then they say something like, "Your grandmother's going to hell," right? And it's like, wait, what? Did she ever convert to Islam? No. Well, then she's going, no, that's not how that works. Or, maybe there's somebody who you would consider bad because just society reflects on them as a bad person, or because nobody actually asks what their intention is. And in reality, they're just being a hermit or a recluse. So then there's a fire, and they go in and they risk their lives and they save everybody in the house. Well, you never know, right?
Judge less on what people say and more on what they do when no one's watching.
I still believe in that statement. I've heard so many empty promises in my life. It's not even funny. I don't mean just in my work life or my personal relationship life or anything like that. I feel like it's very, very important for people to try to be genuine and honest when they can at any expense because it's like ripping off a band aid. Sometimes it's just better to do it. I do understand that sometimes there are situations where you can't be candid because there's a lack of information or the situation hasn't been settled. And that's on the other person to accept that honesty. Look, I can't tell you right now what's going on because it's still going on. Once it's resolved or once I have more details, that's when I'll update you. And the type of people who continue to push in those situations, I'm sorry that you feel like that, honestly. But you need to learn to respect boundaries. You need to learn to respect that when somebody's trying to be honest with you and you're only giving them the option of either lie to me or cut me out of your life, well, then you need to be willing to accept the consequences.
Perfect. Judge less on what people say and more on what they do when no one's watching.
I think that's also key. What they do when no one is watching. I know a lot of people who on the streets seem a certain way. We hear a lot of these stories about religious leaders who end up getting caught in scandals. And it's because, well, what they do outside and what they do behind closed doors is very, very different. We all have our secrets, not to uh, kink shame or anything like that, but I don't like people who are very boastful of their how good they are and what they do that's so good. And if you have to say it, that just makes me suspicious that there is something else going on.
Honesty and rudeness. The line between honesty and rudeness is how you say it. You're overweight versus you're a fat piece of saying truth.
Ooh. So I have been on and off obese. I have been, when I was younger, I think the last time I was like skinny, I was maybe about 13. And then my father bought a Chinese restaurant, which I was the cashier, the manager, the waiter. I was everything but the chef, basically. And I got very fat. And it wasn't just because of food, it was I was eating food continuously that was unhealthy. And then whenever I had an opportunity to just rest and not do anything and just shove my face full of food, I did. And I was drinking more Coke than I definitely should have. And I wasn't drinking enough water. And I put on approximately somewhere between 20 and 30 pounds in a single month. Basically, about a half a month into the first month of owning the restaurant that I just blew up. So I feel like this was maybe a personal jab at myself because there are different ways of motivating yourself. And some people use positive motivation, some people use negative motivation. And if you don't know the difference, you can look it up. But the positive motivation is, you got this, bro. You can do it. Never give up. And then the negative one is more like, you suck at life. And if you don't get up out of bed, you're gonna, you'll never achieve anything. So we all have our different versions of that. But I think with the reason I separated this from the lying part is because this is not, to me, was not just about being honest with other people and being rude or polite with other people, but also being honest with yourself and being rude or polite with yourself.
Different delivery. Honesty without. Empathy is cruelty. But silence when someone needs the truth, that's not kindness either.
I still agree with that sentiment. I know that it's a difficult sentiment, and I think that's why you need to express why you're being silent if you're going to have to be silent. If it's one of those things with where you're like, look, I can't answer you right now because if I do, I'm either going to say something that's going to hurt you or hurt our relationship, and it's better to just be silent. Being clear about that, and that's it. That's all you can do. They have to respect that request. But if you're just being silent, you're just stonewalling the person, that's not kindness. You're not giving an explanation of why the situation is or what it is and why you're being silent with them. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about when parents give kids the silent treatment because they did something they shouldn't have. Well, it's already a known subject of that. And sometimes we do have to give silence so that the person themselves can reflect and realize what is actually going on.
Time your truth. And when in doubt, imagine how you want to hear it. Will and determination. Talent is overrated. Drive matters more. You can be born smart, pretty, rich, and still waste it all.
I 100% agree with this, especially when I was at that age, because my father had always compared me to other people. He had friends of his who were doctors and engineers, and their kids were, they had more opportunities and they had more natural talents than I did. But by the time I had reached the age that I wrote this, I had actually achieved more than they had with less. And that was because I was determined to prove myself, not for somebody else, but for myself. My father didn't even know I graduated college until almost a decade later when he was like, wait a second, don't you need a degree to work in that field? I have a degree. Anyways, so that's kind of the thing. I knew people who, especially at that time, were just wasting it. They went to college and instead of focusing on their studies or taking on extra courses or filling and occupying their time with positive things, they were wasting their time. They were getting drunk at parties and all this other stuff. Now, I will admit that part of the reason I didn't go through that in college as much was because I had already gone through that phase at a younger age. So there's that. So no, I still stand by it. A lot of people waste the opportunities that they are naturally given. Sometimes they don't realize that they have those opportunities because nobody's called them out on it. I'm calling you out on it. If you have advancements and an advantage over other people, use that opportunity to set goals at that level so that you can become something greater.
You can be born average and still change the world.
Agreed.
Will is the spark. Determination is the grind. Find your reason. Fuel it daily. And don't wait for motivation. Create motion.
I still agree with this. The most difficult part of any goal is the first step, right? If you want to go to the gym, honestly, genuinely, you're like, I'm going to do this daily, then you need to have your shoes ready to go. You need to have your gym clothes or whatever it is that you need that is time consuming. While you are doing that thing, that's when you end up getting distracted or deciding on not doing or not following through. Set those things up in advance, the night before, right? So that way it's already ready to go. I don't know about anybody else, but when I was younger, I was raised pack your school bag the night before. So that way you wake up in the morning, does not matter, even if you wake up 5 minutes before the school bus shows up or 5 minutes before you're supposed to leave the house, your book bag is already ready to go. All you have to do is throw on some clothes, slip on your shoes, go. And I say slip on your shoes because till now, all of my laced shoes are pre-tied. None of my shoes are, unless they're boots, hiking boots, where you actually need to unlace them because of hooks. Every single one of my shoes is still pre-tied. At any moment, at any time of the day, I can literally just pick up and go. And I've always been like that because I know that one of the most difficult things is taking that first step. One of the most difficult things is staying motivated. You might wake up in the morning and be like, but then you get out of bed and then you see that bag and you're like, oh man, but I already put in the effort to pack the bag. Screw it. And then you just go. And because your gym clothes is already in there, you don't need to worry about the other parts. You don't need to be concerned about getting dressed and changed and doing anything. Just go to the gym, wash your face at the gym. Trust me, once you're there and you're like already in motion, before you know it, you're like, ah, screw it. This literally happened to me the other day. I told myself, all right, I'm going to go down to the gym for 5 minutes. That's it. Because I was just not in the mood to actually work out. But I promised myself that I would at least get out of the house and go to the gym for at least 5 minutes. And next thing, I checked my watch and I was already down there for 25 minutes. Now, I know that doesn't seem like a lot of time for gym bros or people who are used to going to the gym. But trust me, I'm talking to you, you people who know who you are. Just do it. Those 5 minutes become 15 minutes, those 15 minutes become 30 minutes, and you don't have to go and compare yourself to all of these other people. Just do it. Get that creation, create that motion, create that attitude, create that pathway. And it's just like a pathway in a field. The more you travel on that same path, the easier it is, the clearer it is, the goal becomes just so obvious. You're like, oh my God, I can see it. I can get there. And I know we all have those down days. That's fine. again, that's why I believe I put this under the human condition because that is a part of the human condition, right?
Freedom is choice and owning the consequences.
I think that's something that somebody else had told me, actually. I don't even think that's an original statement.
Freedom. Freedom is choice and owning the consequences.
Yeah, I think it was one of my dad's friends who actually I would consider him as a friend as well. And he's from Bosnia, and he taught me a lot about life. It was the first time I ever had a real construction job. I'd worked for him actually a few times in my life, on and off, mostly during summers and stuff. And right before I went into college, this was related to me smoking, and of course nobody wants a young person to smoke, and he confronted me about it because he is also a smoker, and he said, look, who's paying for your cigarettes? And I was like, me. And he's like, okay, well, who's buying your cigarettes, because you're not old enough to buy them? And I was like, he's like, how are you doing that? I was like, well, I was paying somebody else, because in the rest of the world, a lot of places they don't check for ID, but in the U.S. they're very strict about that. And I did what most typical American teenagers do, which is you pay somebody else, or you tell them like, "Look, buy me a pack of cigarettes, and I'll give you a few of them to pay for it, or whatever." There's always that person who's lingering around the gas station. It's like, so basically, on top of you paying for that bad habit, you're also paying a tax on it. And I said, yeah. He said, you don't think you should use your money more wisely? And I was like, well, but it's what I want to use my money on. And he said, well, do you know what the consequences are? And I said, well, yeah, I mean, there's a possibility of getting lung cancer and all this other stuff. I went into it, and he's like, fine, then screw it. It's nobody's choice. It is your freedom to choose that because you know the consequences. You are making a conscious choice, even as a young person. And I still agree with that statement. I think at the end of the day, if you're an older person dealing with a younger person, doesn't matter about the age difference. You have to give them the opportunity to know their consequences. And once they do that, and you are sure of that understanding, it is their freedom of owning those consequences, because that's all we have in life. And sometimes you don't realize it, but when you put that type of negative pressure on them, they may know the consequence and they may not actually want to do the thing. But because you are so adamantly against it, you are making them feel like the only way they can feel free is to do the thing that has a negative consequence, even though they don't actually want to do it. So you need to be aware of the type of person you're dealing with and what they're actually capable of. Because a lot of these young people, we underestimate them and we think that they have to do what we tell them to do. And there are a lot of people who fall in line. But for the ones who don't, are you willing to lose your child? Are you willing to lose, your grandchild? Are you willing to lose that person's entire future because you want them to be in this tight little box, knowing that that personality is the type that they will fight for their freedom, even if they know the consequences are negative, because that is the only freedom they have left? Wouldn't it be better to give them an opportunity to have freedom, right, without having to face negative consequences? I'm mostly talking to the adults in the room.
You can do whatever you want, but don't act surprised when your choices cost you.
I think I'm, again, in that sense, I'm talking to the people who are older than me, because I know a lot of adults, even back then, who they know the consequences and they don't care, right? Subconsciously. Right? It's like the guy who cuts you off in traffic, and then you end up rear ending him, and then the cops show up and he's like, they rear ended me. And then the cops look at the angle and they're like, well, no, it's quite obvious that you cut the person off. And that's why they end up rear ending you. And then he gets angry. It's like, yeah, but you knew that. Whether you knew it surface level or subconsciously, you knew it.
Satisfaction means you're good with your decision. Regret means you're pretending you are. Real freedom, being able to say, this was my choice and I'll live with it.
I still agree with that sentiment. I believe it's one of the reasons where there are a lot of things that I did in life where I was like, I could have done that different, right? I could have done it differently is a very different sentiment or statement than I should have done it differently. I should have done it differently is much more regret. I could have done it differently is learning from your past. And there's a massive difference because people who live with regret become resentful and they become negative, and there's just so much. I do not believe that you should live in regret unless there is guilt in the matter. And when there's guilt in the matter, well, then that's a whole different thing. We're not even talking about choices. We're not talking about freedom. We're talking about things that are have a massive negative impact on others. I'm more focused on like yourself and maybe your direct um, family members, friends and family.
Planning. Plans fail, but the act of planning prepares you. Don't just wing life and blame the world when it crashes.
I definitely still believe in this to an insane extent. I have notebooks and notebooks and notebooks full of plans, plan A, and then there's a backup plan B, and then sometimes there's even a backup plan C. And then all three fall through, or it ends up raining and I don't end up getting to do any of the things I had planned. But I still feel good that I put in the effort to make a plan. Why? Because then another weekend comes or another holiday comes and I don't need to plan because I already remember, oh yeah, last week I told myself that if it was going to be sunny, I would do this, right? But instead it was really rainy and stormy and cloudy and I didn't get to do any of that. But now this weekend it's nice and it's sunny and it's dry outside. Perfect. So I can do one of those things because I'd already planned ahead. So a lot of people wonder, why am I so good at being able to take quick action? And it is not because I'm reactionary. It is because I have spent so much of my free time not over planning. Please be very clear. I don't like having to over plan because a lot of times when you over plan, you end up becoming disappointed when things don't work out. I'm saying a simple plan, like the picture says, plan equals peace, right?
Have a direction. Have goals. Have backups. Break big goals into small steps. Expect detours. Stay flexible. And know that just because a plan changes doesn't mean you fail.
Ooh, yeah, I still definitely agree with that. I think, in a sense, I'm not just talking to the reader. I'm also talking to myself at that time to remind myself that I had plans, simple plans, and they didn't follow through because they didn't. I wasn't able to follow through with them, and they ended up affecting bigger plans. I do believe that a vision board, you can do any type of vision board, be it text or taking a magazine or newspaper and cutting out the stuff that you want, or doing it online or Photoshop or Canva or whatever works for you. My recommendation, though, with a vision board and these types of plannings, you need to be realistic. There's a book called How to Be Your Own Best Friend. I think I've mentioned it in a few other videos. It's a thin book. It still takes a while to read because it just covers so much. But one of the main things we end up failing, and we don't just fail others, we fail ourselves, which puts us in a depressive state, makes us not want to plan, and it makes us not want to set goals, and it makes us not want to achieve, and it makes us just crawl into a ball in a corner and not want to even go outside, is setting unrealistic expectations, setting unrealistic goals, setting our standard too high, putting people up on a pedestal, these types of negative behaviors. Now, again, human condition. It is normal to do that at first. This is why I don't think it's advisable to keep all of your plans in your head. It is better to either, some people like doing that stuff on their phone. Personally, I like pen and paper because I like being able to see it and I like being able to scratch out the ones where it's like, nope, well, that's not possible. I can tell myself a million times that I'm going to go and visit 20 countries this year, right? But the reality is, I do not have the finances. I do not have the time or ability to organize that type of situation. I can tell myself a million things. I could say, I want to go see all of Japan in 1 week. Are you actually seeing Japan or are you just passing through? Because technically, yes, you can go all the way to the top. I believe it's Hokkaido and go all the way down and you can get it all done in a week if you're on the train the majority of the time because you also need to eat and sleep at some point, right? and use the restroom and let people know that you're alive, and you never know about the detours and whatever is going to happen along the way. So you need to be realistic when you're doing this. And just because your plan didn't work out the way you wanted to with the same expectations, that's okay. You did not fail. You tried, you gave it your best, and that's what matters.
It means you adapted time management. You don't need more time, you need better decisions about time. Stop saying I'm too busy. You had time, you just gave it to something else.
I, again, still stand by this statement. I know for a fact, especially when we're younger, and our parents ask us to do something we don't want to do, and it should only take 30 minutes, and we end up spending 2 hours doing it. And it's mostly because, well, it wasn't something I wanted to do in the first place. So I actually have patience for young people when it comes to that because I know what that feeling is like. And because maybe somebody in life hasn't explained to them that actually if you get this done and out of the way, you can use the rest of your time as you please, which ties back into like using your free time wisely. Now, there's a difference between taking your time to do something because you want to make sure it's done correctly or because you really just need to fill the time, what we do with certain jobs as an adult. But the reality is, too many people grow up, and because nobody actually teaches them good time management skills, they end up negatively impacting the people around them, and they end up running late, which causes the other people to be late, which causes everybody to eat dinner late, which makes everybody hangry, and it has a trickle effect, which becomes a giant snowball, and it can ruin friendships. And I genuinely believe from my understanding, the Japanese and the Germans are very adamant, and maybe the Netherlands as well. Basically, the Scandinavian, no, not Scandinavian, Scandinavian countries that they are much more adamant about good time management skills and respecting other people's times. Anyways, all of that uh, to be said as a warning. If somebody tells you you do that again and you waste my time again, I'm cutting you out. Take it serious.
Every minute is a vote for who you are becoming. Spend them like they matter, because they do not, time doesn't wait. But it does keep receipts. Everyone is for sale.
Ooh, this one is controversial. So, Everyone is for Sale is one of the sections in the book that I was even considering not keeping it in the book. But the reality is, we are, right? Be it having a job or going to school or whatever the situation is. I'm going to listen to a little bit more before I give any feedback.
Even you. Everyone has a price. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's love. Maybe it's attention. But don't pretend you wouldn't do something for $1 million. You probably would if it was in cash and no one was watching.
So I think I'm implying something here that basically because of our own self sense of self-worth and the fact that we want people to have that same sense towards us, that we'd be like, no, of course not, I would never do that. While in reality, if we could get away with it, it's not we would want to do it. We're not seeking those opportunities. I'm not talking about people who go put themselves in situations where they're like, I need to find a way to make some money and I don't care, how I do it. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about sometimes, and the people who get put in this situation will never admit to it directly. They will typically only admit to it if it gets brought to light or if they reach a point where they can't live with themselves keeping it a secret. But so many of us have been put in a situation where we did something we know we would regret. We know that we would look negatively on ourselves and maybe even the people in our lives would look negatively on us. But the offer was just, I mean, you'd have to be stupid to refuse it because we know that even though the people in our lives would deny willingness to accept that offer in public, if they were put in our situation, they would do it. So I think knowing that, knowing your own self worth and knowing your own price makes it a lot easier because sometimes if you set the price too high, anyways, well, then it doesn't matter because nobody's willing to pay that price.
The point isn't shame, it's awareness.
Right.
Know what you're willing to sell. and what you never should, because the world is always buying death. It's the only guarantee. You don't know when, you don't know how, but you will die.
Yeah, it's funny that this is actually I'm reacting to this today because there's one of those Instagram reels where the person's like, "Fuck it," or "fuck them" or something like that. Like you're gonna die. Like the end game for this thing we call life is death. So don't waste it, right? Don't waste it fighting with people you don't need to. Don't waste it arguing, spending time with people where there's nothing there. Now, I am not saying walk away from your relationships. I am not saying ignore people who are important or you should be spending more energy and time with them. I'm not saying to neglect those people in favor of new experiences or new people because honestly, that's how you end up alone when you're dead. What I am saying though is be aware and accept it. And then when that happens, you actually live happier. I know a lot of older people who are so afraid of death that they have made horrible decisions that negatively boomers. I'm talking to you. I'm just gonna call boom. I'm talking to you. Y'all are at that point. You know, death is okay, listen, man, the world doesn't need to be on fire, and we don't need to be in World War III because you think we're too weak, and the only way for you to weed us out is to start shit before you guys are out. Please stop.
So stop acting like you're invincible. Say what you need to say. Do what you need to do. Live like your story is being written.
That audio is supposed to be live, but for some reason it came out as live. I'm trying to go back. I had to cut myself off there.
To say, do what you need to do. Live like your story is being written because it is.
Very true. Every single day you wake up and you move. And when I start my video series about my life, you're gonna question a lot of it. You're gonna be like, whoa, that's not like as every addition to it, you're going to question how is that possible? You have lived 10 lives. Well, that's because that was one of my goals. One of my goals was to maximize my purpose in life, to maximize what I did in life. Why did I postpone making this YouTube channel for so long? Not this book specifically, but starting a YouTube channel because my life was so busy, so occupied, so much stuff was going on that I knew that I would not have the time, energy, and I would not be willing to accept the results of me doing that. And now I'm at a point in my life where, okay, I have the time, I have the energy, and I have the capability and the skill set to do it. It's not perfect, but the opportunity is there. So I will take it. And I genuinely believe this is my words of encouragement for you. If you don't know what tomorrow holds, but you found out that it was your last day, and somebody picked up a book that was about your life and they read that book to you, how would it make you feel? How would your choices make you feel? How would the people in your life make you feel? How would, you know, the use of your time make you feel? I'm not saying sign up for every class. I'm not saying sign up for every language. Be realistic, right? Because also joining or starting too many things and not actually following through with them is not how you would want your life to look either. Unless that's what you're into, in which case I'm not judging you. That's on you. If you want to be somebody who just starts a bunch of projects and never finishes them, that's on you. But you need to face the reality of who you are and what's the story you want to tell at the end. A story that satisfies you, not satisfies everybody else. If you are somebody who people would consider vanilla and has a normal job and does 9 to 5 and just, basically has the same routine, is that your story? Are you okay with that? Are you content with that? Are you happy with that? Then screw the rest. There's nothing wrong with living a normal, average life. But if you're somebody who wants to be a daredevil, then do your research, find out how to do it safely, and go follow through with that. And if you want to be less than that, if you just want to be a bookworm or an academic, find out how do I do that and follow through with it, because sometimes we get to a point in life where we don't even live, right? So it's your story. It's not over yet. Get out there, do something about it, live it.
And when you go, let it be said that you lived, not just existed.
All right. I will say thank you so much for bearing with me on this section. Like, share, subscribe. I'm doing actions. I don't know why. And I would love to hear your comments. At some point, I'm definitely going to have to get the timestamps on here. When I do, I'll just post it on the socials.